We are faced with a number of challenges to convergence. One is the pace of life. We live with a high speed of life. Society reinvents itself about every 3 years. The church every 50 years. Just an FYI. So that's why we sometimes get a grinding of the gears over there. But the speed of life, the replication of knowledge, we already saw it on the God Plus Business Google search. If you look at the number of mobile phone users, etc., we live in an increasingly fast world. It's hard to press pause, to hear God, when we're living at that kind of speed. By the way, there's a guy out of Stanford who talks about the new economy pathology. He's a professor. He talks about the fact how we live life 24/7. We're always on. So what happens with technology is that technology used to be that we had one technology for work and a separate technology for home. Now we have the same technology, which means when you take a vacation, you're never really on vacation. How many of you check your emails while I'm talking? You think, oh, I can multitask. No, you can't, right? Just listen to me. Put your phone away. Because technology magnets, these things actually suck away our attention and they suck away our time with God. I'm not talking about going to the basement, with your Bible necessarily, but the fact is, when even advertisements, oh yeah, we offer great careers in Canada. I saw an ad yesterday, and there's 4 or 5 people in a row, and what is one of them doing? She's on a BlackBerry, of course, because this is Canada, right? It's like some telecom company advertising this, right? You know what BlackBerry Jam is, right? You're walking down the road and all of a sudden the person in front of you goes super slow. Why? They're checking your BlackBerry. Yeah. And so I knew I'd arrived in Canada when the plane lands, everybody turns on their phones, not iPhones, it's BlackBerries, right? So anyway. But these technology magnets suck away our attention from God, so we have to watch out for that. Media-induced angst. When Wired magazine came out, the editors of Wired magazine predicted that by now TV would be gone. Because so much, the news is about, you don't actually need a TV. You can get your stuff off the news feeds, etc., etc. What keeps TV alive? Fear. You have to turn on the TV to know what went wrong today. Did Israel bomb Iran? Was there another Arab Spring? Has another embassy been bombed, etc., etc., etc. And so the media functions of keeping a high level of fear, so that we have to go and see what's going wrong. So you have to watch out that you don't get sucked into that. Another is the redefining of time. At the end of the Convergence book, I've got a whole bunch of trends, and we were talking yesterday at lunchtime about the difficulty of engaging Generation Y if you're running a church. Why? Because about 12 years ago, I was seeing or predicting that people would have what you call roll your own community. Now, in the olden days, when Clement grew up, I wouldn't do that if I was in Korea. I would say, oh, I'm so happy now. But in the olden days, when Clement and I grew up, actually, I wanted to know as a pastor, who am I responsible for? Are you part of my church, yes or no? I don't want to get to heaven and find out I was responsible for Caleb, and I hardly ever saw him. I didn't know, was it some other? And so I got together with the other churches in the area. We got together once a month, and we said, hey, there's this guy Caleb. I think he'll do better. Is he going to your place? Is he going to my place? No, I think he's at your place. Okay, but Caleb, you got to go to that place. That's what we would do, right? Now, Caleb's like, you know what? I like the teaching from this church. I don't have to go there because I can get a podcast on my iPod. I can just get a podcast. I like the worship from this one. I can get that one online. I like the small group that has people downtown from this financial services thing. And I like the annual camp or the barbecue at this place. So he rolls his own community. Who's responsible for Caleb? It's hard to tell. And so the redefining of community and the redefining of time. Also, when is Caleb working and when is he on vacation? When is he studying and so on? Those lines have become blurred. That becomes a challenge to convergence. Even the redefining of work and the eroding of boundaries. You go to a company like Google. If you go down to Google headquarters, Little bicycle, vegetable garden, laundry things, free food and all this kind of stuff. Is it because they're nice? No, they want their people to stay at work. Quite simple. You can even get the dentist, you know, they have mobile dental labs, mobile tune your car up labs, change the oil and all this kind of stuff. Work becomes community. And so there's this integration of work and fun kind of stuff that's taking place. So there's an eroding of boundaries that happens. Okay. So some of the premises behind convergence. One is that life isn't separated into compartments. The Industrial Revolution separated things out. God wants to put them back. Somebody has said, and I don't know if it's true, specialization is a consequence of the fall. Now, I don't know if I totally buy it, but the notion that Adam and Eve actually did a whole bunch of things all at once. They didn't have, Adam didn't say to Eve in the morning, bye honey, I'm going to work. No, the two of them worked together. That's what they did. So there was an integration of work and family. By the way, testing assumptions. If I ask you, how do you set your priorities? What's your number one priority? You all said God. Okay. Number two? Most people say family. Number three? Most people say church. Number four, people say work. Where do you get this stuff from? Let's go back to the beginning of the book. Okay. In the beginning, there was God. And He made Adam and Eve, right? They worked before they had family. They worked with God. They worked before they had kids. Why does work have to be like, you know, the ugly kid in the batch? It's rubbish. Okay, just think about some of these things. Where did it get? Huh?
There is a reason for that because of the way we work. So many people put their work first that their families suffer so much from it, and it takes them away from that stuff.
So why don't we go back to the book and work with family? You know, when I was at Price Waterhouse, we would go into companies and we had certain standards. One of the standards was husbands and wives don't get to work in the same company. If they did, we issued a warning. If they worked in the same department, they had to flip departments. That was best practices, but not biblical practices. In the beginning, Adam and Eve, God said, made them. Genesis 1:26 gave them together, husband and wife, the job as co-regents of ruling together. And so we have to examine some of the things which we just assume to be best practices. Now, it doesn't really matter. If your family was working together, and if they were worshipping together, and together with employees and co-workers, customers, suppliers, and so on, and that business had a calling, you have no problem. It's a non-issue as to which is priority. You don't have to say, God first, this, that. I can't get on with my wife unless I get on with God. I can't get on with God unless I get on with my wife. If I'm not talking to my wife, God's not talking to me. The only thing He says is, talk to your wife. That's all. You see how we've separated things? Okay. Clement goes down the aisle, gets married. Minister says, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. Right? And then we say, okay, wifey, go to women's program. You go to man's program. And then they have kids. You go to children's program. Right? And we separate stuff that God puts together. We just have to go back to the book and say, where do we get some of this stuff? Okay, so watch it. Yeah.
What is the likelihood that you can have adequate convergence in all four areas? Because some things have to be done linearly after, and they might not be able to be integrated into the other three just based on demographics. Is there any perfect model that you could strive for? Or is this just the best case scenario?
No. Yeah. No, there is. That's a great, it's good to recognize that it can take you time to come to convergence. I mean, it's not like, oh, I got the formula and I'm 23 and I got it all figured out, so here we go. But I've had people like in their early 30s saying, Brett, I'm living the converged life. This is what I'm doing. Because once they understand the elements, they can make better life decisions that gets them there sooner. I mean, I tried to obey God step by step, and looking back, I could see, oh yeah, kind of this is what's happened. But it took me until I was 40 or so before I could look back and see that. Now we tell people from the get-go. When my daughter was in high school, I took her out of a Bible class and I taught her Convergence, because she has life decisions to make. And she's not going to get equipped at school or university to make it. So, yeah, you can do all four of these things. Simple example. Are there any housewives in the room here? Any moms with kids? Okay. Simple sentence. So you meet a mother. She's at home. This is the old days when life was easy, right? You're a mom. What's your calling? Raise godly kids. What's your career? Raise godly kids. No paid, but that's okay. Who's your community? All of the people around raising godly kids. Where does all your creativity go? Into raising godly kids. All four of those things are together. Now what does society do? It says, oh, you don't want to be just a housewife, right? You need to first go and get a great career. Don't get a husband while you're at university. Only slackers do that. What you do is, okay, you know, people at Bible college or something. So first build your career, right? You only want to do that. Then later on you can think about getting married. Then later on, right? We were in South Africa, and we were there on our second trip. There's a girl, Anne-Marie Clegg, and Lynn's driving along in the car. Anne-Marie says out of the middle of nowhere, I've been sold a bill of goods. Like out of nowhere. Lynn said, well, what do you mean? She said, I've just realized that all of the professors at college that told me, pursue your career first, all of them are single. So, you know, what we have to help young people appreciate, but you can start this anywhere, is no. God's plan is that all four of these things belong together, because God is one. And we have to ask the tough questions to figure out how we do it. I'll give you an example. Lynn and I, sorry, not Lynn and I was invited to speak at a church conference for the staff retreat. There's like 50 or 60 staff on hearing God. I said, we would love to speak. They said, who's we? I said, well, my wife and I, you know, I mean, we attend the church. They know that I have a wife. They've been to my house. If she's not going, I'm not going. Now, I did most of the speaking that weekend. Other times, Lynn does most of the speaking. You know, I mean, she speaks to bigger crowds than I do, but there we go. But there's this notion, and so, you know, these marketplace ministry conferences, oh, you can come to the conference in San Diego, all this kind of stuff, here's the program, and the wives will go shopping or to SeaWorld. It's just like throw up right there. Because Genesis chapter 1, what God tries to put together, we kind of, you know, and as somebody has said, you know, Sunday morning is the most segregated hour of the week. And we don't just do it racially or denominationally, etc., but you know, we do it gender-wise, etc. So I'm saying, if you're early on in your career, find something you can do with your wife. Oh, I don't care about this. Get to care about what she cares about, and vice versa. Yeah.
So just a comment on the question. The comment is, this concept was in the early church. I mean, there's many examples of this, and look at the Jewish culture and so on. There is that convergence. There is that sense that we work together, and everything you do is one. There's no separation of God. The question that comes to is that, do you see this more as something that's coming back in North American phenomenon, if you will, or is this something that is very much alive in underdeveloped countries where they appreciate the family and the unit in God as opposed to work? Where North America and other developed countries, we tend to put work at the focal point of life. Is this? I'm not sure if I'm making the question clear enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it clearer do you see it differently in other cultures? Depends on the culture. So some cultures are good at, for example, multi-generational family businesses. So businesses run, say, in Indonesia, often first, second, third generation. Sometimes in South Africa, I have a friend where they have 5 generations in a company. The company's been going for about nearly 100 years with multiple generations, and great honor between the parents and the kids, What businesses do they get into? I've noticed that sometimes the businesses they get into is stuff that the kids are interested in. Because it's more important for them to be doing business together than to have a singular focus